Hello and welcome, and I'm delighted to introduce Samantha Ford. Sammi is a poet, keynote speaker, Air Force veteran, and she runs her own company, among many other things. Sammi took me on a virtual tour of her home and garden, and it was great to see how much we have in common during our conversations. So welcome, Sammi.
Hello, Sally. How are you?
Oh, well, you never ask an autistic person
No,
that, do
no,
you?
no.
Before we came on just a minute ago, we were telling each other, but we'll just leave that for another friendly chat another day. We're okay, aren't we?
We are, yeah. We keep it going.
So let's begin. I just want, for our audience, just by finding out a little bit more about you. So where you live, if you don't mind me asking, how old you are, and your neurotype, and however you want to describe it, because we all use different language.
Mm. Yeah, so I'm 54 now. I have to calculate that these days. Live in Lincolnshire, although I do travel nationwide for most of the talks that I give. So I don't consider myself particularly restricted because specifically because I've lived in different countries. And neurotype, I would say AuDHD because I don't think it's autism plus ADHD. I do think there are specific difficulties with having both of them together.
Well, and it's funny you say that because I read a post on LinkedIn, and I think it was Samantha Hugh was saying the being ADHD is horrific, but and it's always personal for both of us. And for me, I say thank God I am ADHD, because if I was just ADHD, I don't think I'd be here. And I think my autism keeps my ADHD in check. It's like the analytical, logical side, and the ADHD is the crazy side. But that old cliche phrase, once you met one autistic, you've met one, and all of our experiences are completely different, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it manifests itself in frustration because my head wants to so be organized. Everything I do, if I'm planning anything, is on a spreadsheet. It has to be to the detail, to the penny. I'm not happy if my VAT return is a penny out, but then I'm so scatterbrained in other things that frustrates me that I have to hyper-focus. That's the only way I can get through jobs, because I'm distracted so easily. And the other way it manifests itself, as you introduced me with so many different interests and things that I would love to do, is that the autistic side really wants to do them well, but the ADHD side wants to do everything. But I know now that I can't do everything to the extent that I want to do it. So I have to make compromises, and it's incredibly frustrating.
And yeah, and I get that, and I know what you mean about the compromise. And quite a long way back, lots of people are talking about monotropism on the autism side. And yes, absolutely, I can be monotropic for sure, but the ADHD side is polytropic. And so that you're putting those two together, and it can be really difficult. It depends where we are in our life, what's going on around us, whether we've had sleep, food, just all the other things. So I do understand.
I'll give you an
So
example is that you said I start a business, but that's not to say I haven't had other businesses. I mean, I could probably say I've got three on the go at the moment if you count my industrial business, my stage photography business, and obviously the talks and writing. I'm writing a memoir as well as giving talks and poetry workshops actually. So yeah. But in the past, at one point my main industrial sort of chemical business went off into garden seeds. And because it's an import and export business, I was importing different varieties of seed. I studied seed types. I was giving talks on vegetables to WIs and things like that. I created a garden seed catalogue, which was spectacular, I do have to say. It was designed, and sent out to thousands of people around the UK. And then when I realised that it really was taking me off track of my normal business, it all went in a skip.
yeah, yeah.
You know, that's an example, really.
And I really understand that. And really the predominant neurotype of person, of human, probably wouldn't get that, but that you know, that's what we do. We give everything all we've got. And I want to ask you a bit later on, if that's okay. I want to ask you to go into a bit more detail about that. But if we start off from, you know, sort of young Sammi, how would you describe your childhood? I know that you've spoken to me about some of the challenges you had. Please elaborate things like hyperlexia and talking a lot. But tell us yourself more about what your childhood was like, because you didn't have a clue that you were different then, I suppose.
No, and what I find interesting as I'm writing these books at the moment is that we tend to not only be in our own bubbles, but we're also in, it's obviously genetic, and so we're in family types. So not only would we not recognize it ourselves, but our family wouldn't recognize it either. So I know when I was first diagnosed, you know, the questions were, but you've always been like that. You know, you've always been a little bit quirky. So yeah, hyperlexia, I was reading very, very quickly. I mean, I was reading Wuthering Heights, Watership Down, Shogun, all of these big books when I was probably less than 10 years old.
Wow.
Um, oh yeah, and then I'd be at the library every week getting more books out. When I was in, well, when I was still into Elvis, you know, I was bringing books back from the library and copying them line by line into exercise books before I took the books back to the library. Um, and equally, they actually say with hyperlexia, you actually read quicker than you understand what it is you're reading. Um, and then, yeah, talking, I was always called Chatterbox. I remember the song, it's in my memoir actually, Shut Up in Your Face. I remember people saying to me, Shut up in
Yeah.
your face. And when I was very young, when my mum was having my sister in hospital, I had to be moved on from a particular family because I just drove them so mad that they put the vacuum cleaner on in the background just so they couldn't hear my voice. And I was 4 years old at that stage.
And it's I'm so interested in that because I wrote my memoir and it was from the age of 7 to 26, and it's been an amazing thing, and I really wish you all the best with yours, because when you've written it all down and you remember, because my memory can be a bit terrible. I remember that when I was really young, so I was, well, I suppose I was 7 because we were living in a particular place. I used to speak gobbledygook, and I used to go next to the next door to the neighbours, stand in their living room, and just sing gobbledygook music about a girl in a mountain and all this sort of thing. And at school, I was called, because my maiden name was Russell, and they used to call me Sally Fusspot. And one of the teachers actually pulled my bunches because I wouldn't shut up. And then later on, as a young adult working at Philips, everyone used to complain because I spoke too loudly and too
Yeah,
much.
I think my favorite word was why. I had to analyze everything, and you know, why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? And looking back, it's no surprise that I ended up studying languages because I speak French and German. I did French, German, and maths for A level, French and German then at A level. But if you looking back, not only is it that language, which I did exactly like you did, gobbledygook, but they're all codes if you think about it. So
Yeah,
these secret languages were codes, and everything I have done in my life actually has been black and white logical thinking. You know, if I
amazing.
understand why it's going to work, and that's why I didn't really like humanities at school, because if the assessor hasn't told me what it is I'm writing, or what's expected of me, then how am I supposed to revise for it? Tell me the answer, what the answer's going to be. Tell me how to get there, and I'll know how to do it. But if I'm writing an essay and I don't know whether you're going to like it or not, then I can't revise as far as I'm concerned. So I just chucked them out the window.
That's fascinating. My thing was audio processing disorder, which I didn't know I had, but we sent our son for a screening of that at 10, and I know I had it at 10 because my thing was I couldn't take instructions and I wasn't very good at comprehension. I could remember streams of writing and dates and all those sort of things. There's lots of stuff I could do, but I couldn't do maths and things like that. But the stuff I could do, I was really good at. And it's sad to think that there's so many children around now who are really good at certain things, but they don't fit in with this one size fits all with all the kids, you know. So, you know, it I bet it was hard, but still you were able to go on and do A levels and go on to university. you went to university, did you?
I went to university, but I didn't only just go to university. I knew from an early age I wanted to join the military because I'd figured out by the age of about 10 again that it was a very easy, a simple way to leave home and be paid for during university. If you got a sponsorship, then when you eventually got a job, you would have your career, your home, and everything all sorted. Yeah, it was going to be it. So I did. I went back to the library, got out all the books that I could about the military, revised that, as I say, from about 10 years old. I went to join the air cadets, but they wouldn't let women fly glide or girls fly gliders. So I basically told them where to go and then joined the sea cadets instead. But I really had in my mind I wanted to join the Air Force. And I went to Biggin Hill when I was probably about 16. And yeah, I got the sponsorship through university. And eventually I did learn to fly at the age of 19, paid for by the Air Force. So I did win in the end.
That's, I mean, the way, like a lot of us, with the ADHD side, you say it quickly and matter of factly, but wow, that is such an incredible thing to have done. And I mean, you've done many other things, and I'm going to come back to those as well. But flying your first plane at 19 is extraordinary. I've just got to ask you though, what did you fly, and what was it like? What was the experience of flying when you're in control like?
They were only small aircraft. I mean, it wasn't jet because I was only a couple of years in front of feminism really in the armed forces. So I wasn't permitted to be a jet pilot. Women couldn't be, full stop. So I was always getting around the system really. But I flew bulldogs mainly. And what was it like? I was told I wasn't a natural by my instructor, but that didn't prevent me from doing it. And I actually flew more than I did actually study when I was going through university. In fact, I didn't really study an awful lot, to be quite honest with you. I sort of knew how to speak French. It sort of came quite naturally. So I just learned how. I just learned. I was going to do it anyway. I think it's just been that dogged determination that you're not going to tell me I can't do it. I will do it anyway. And I remember. I think the first time I went solo was over the sea somewhere on the south coast. And when I came into land, I just remember going, I've done it, I've actually done it. And then hearing air traffic control, yeah, literally applauding me
Oh,
over my ears things. Yeah, yeah. So it was special, I must say.
it is incredible, and that word determined. So many words in the language don't fit us, but one thing, so many of us who are different than the or norm, whatever that means, we're determined and we're adaptable and we're persistent and we just we do these things. And I suppose I turned into a rebel when I was 14, and I just got fed up with being told what to do and just decided what I wanted to do. So I just want to talk about hormones. This is a sort of a menopausy type of podcast for this series. And if we can go back, from back from the RAF and back to your childhood, you were saying to me that you were probably the second girl either in your class or your friendship group to start your periods. So how old were you, and what was your experience like having periods? I've been asking all my guests this, and will continue to do so because they're so different and it's really interesting.
Yeah, I am second period and bra actually, because I remember going for my first sort of cross your heart bra in those days. And I remember walking down the street and these boys teasing me and just shouting out, "Is she or isn't she?" which was the slogan for a
Yeah.
hairspray at the time. And periods, yeah. So I'd have been about 11, I think, 10 or 11. And how, I mean, it, yeah, I suppose there was a bit of pride, but also because I felt growing up, but at the same time, I also felt as if there was an alien growing inside me. And it felt very uncomfortable. These things were happening to my body that I just wasn't comfortable because it was just change that I didn't really like. I won't go into too much that's in the book because some of it probably you won't want to actually air at the time. But it was just like we were reading things like Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. Can you remember that book? No, no, yeah, that was all about puberty. So it was very people in the class. Everyone was reading about it, but nobody was really experiencing it. And I think at that age you feel quite awkward anyway. And I think friendships for me were quite difficult. My friends tended to be the ones that were a little bit on the outskirts rather than the in crowd, I think. So yeah, I did feel a little bit awkward, to be honest.
And because we didn't know, how different we were, we were born the way we are, and so we would have had interoception and we would have had alexithymia. And I don't really remember periods, and I think it was because I just got on with it like everyone else, and I couldn't wait to start. And I was 16, so I was really late. And it wasn't really a problem until sort of later on, but staying on the sort of theme of hormones, let's go into sort of the menopause journey, because that was I've spoken to people who have had PMDD in really difficult situations, hard childbirths and all that sort of thing. But perimenopause, again, okay, the hot flashes and the periods starting and stopping and all that rubbish, trying a bit of HRT, never being able to get the stock of it, going to 6 different chemists and everything. It was just an absolute nightmare. But for me, it was psychological, because I didn't know I was neurodivergent. I always thought I was bonkers anyway, and it was absolutely horrendous. So can you, Sammi, give us an idea about your menopause journey as a neurodivergent person, just someone who's different, specifically because it does seem to be that perimenopause. What was it like for you, kind of your mental health, your symptoms and the support? Try and give us an idea. And
Gosh, where do I start? That's it, that's ultimately what led to diagnosis. I'll start with what you were talking about, alexithymia, and childbirth, etc. I didn't feel particular pain or hot flushes really. I have had 3 children all within a few hours. So my first child, I think I had my first pang at about 4:30 in the morning, had him at 7. By the time I got to my third, in fact, yeah, the second one I was going around a car boot sale and decided I'd just do a few more hours before I popped into hospital. And by the time I got to the third, I actually walked in and said, "Look, I'm about to have the child on the floor, so you either help me or I'll just do it myself." So no, I didn't have pain relief with any of them.
wow.
Um, I've never really felt pain physically, and that also goes with the alexithymia, is that I also don't feel hungry and I don't feel tired and I don't, so I can keep going and keep going. And ultimately, when it came to the perimenopause, it was still the same. I was keeping going and keeping going and keeping going, and I'd forget to eat and I wouldn't sleep, and but I'd just want to, I'd still be on the laptop doing VAT until 2 a.m. And then at some point it just sort of wasn't working anymore.
Yeah.
It was during COVID. It was the same year that there was COVID, there was Brexit, which was affecting my import-export business, obviously. There was grief in the family, the dog died, loads of things all going on at the same time. And so I think I attributed some of my issues to that without realizing that the perimenopause was happening at the same time. And then I started to drink more because we were all at home. So I'd always used alcohol in the Air Force. Obviously, alcohol's prevalent if you're trying to keep up with the boys. But I was now drinking at home, and then I was using it to relax. I was using it to sleep. I was using it. And I can't remember exactly when it happened for the first time, but yeah, I went to bed on a Monday and I woke up at Friday when the ambulance crew woke me up, and I was rushed into hospital. That then started to happen quite regularly, and they would rush me in because I hadn't eaten or drank anything.
So was
Um,
what was that? Were you malnourished? Were you dehydrated? What were they doing to you? Were they sticking loads of drips in you and trying to sort of balance your whole system again?
they were doing that primarily, apart from the couple of times I was actually taken in when I said, "If you send me home, I'm going to do it again, and if next time I'll do a better job." Um, because
So
yeah,
what were you doing? Were you over drinking or starving yourself?
I know at that point, because it was happening, and I not only did I not know what was going on, but my family were blaming me. And this is
Oh
not
no.
this is not their fault. It was like that, it was me, it was my fault for going. I didn't, and then to be blamed, but then not know why it's happening yourself became really quite awful. So I basically took overdoses a few times. That's what happened. And then they would take me in, and as I said, I would just say, well, if you send me home, I'm going to do it again. So they did take me in, and it was then that I started to get mental health support, partly through the NHS and partly through Walking with the Wounded, and bless their souls, because they're going to have me as one of their success stories. Success, I'm not quite sure about that, but success stories on their website. So
Well,
yeah,
can you tell us a
for
little bit
them.
more about that then? Because um, whatever it was, whether, it sounds like complex PTSD, but there were in your body, in your nervous system, just in your whole form of Sammi, some really terrible things were happening to the point where you couldn't cope and you wanted to end it, and it was absolutely awful. So, how on earth did you come out of that?
I think that determination again, because it would have been easier not to have come out, to be honest. Um, if I didn't have three children, I don't think I would have, for a
Yeah.
start. I think they, I wanted to do well by them, and it was just when I was at a fork. Which way do I go? I can try. But it was the diagnosis that got when I was fast tracked, I think, through the autism diagnosis, and literally as soon, because I'd been to the doctor and said I'm tired. I'd been to the doctor and said I can't sleep. She gave me sleeping tablets, which I then took an overdose of. I went to the doctor and said, my brain's fuzzy. I can't work. And I tried everything, and then I was put on antidepressants. And I was like, no, it's not that. It's not that. I asked the ambulance crew at one point, am I an alcoholic? And I went to AA, and I sat there and said, I'm Sammi, I'm an alcoholic. And I thought, I'm not an alcoholic, and I don't really believe in God. What am I doing sat here? And it was only when I got the diagnosis when everything just started to click into place. And I said, well, this is what it's been like all of the time. And all I've been doing is putting sticking plasters on, I can it's I get a little bit annoyed by some of the rhetoric that's on social media, etc., because when people are questioning overdiagnosis or late diagnosis, and were we ever autistic, or is anyone on the spectrum, or are we all on the spectrum? Because I know that if I hadn't had that diagnosis, I know I wouldn't be here today.
Mm. Yeah, I completely I do understand that, and it is totally frightening. And the thing is just sharing what you're talking about as well, because I just thought I was completely crazy, and everyone gaslit me and made me feel that I was crazy. So I was misdiagnosed as childhood trauma and not autistic when I was 55 during COVID. And it took me 6 weeks with a really good autistic coach to build my confidence up and get much more ammunition, really, and find a fantastic woman to assess me properly, who was autistic and had done hundreds of assessments over 10 years. And she said, yes, you are a bit complicated and you are quite ADHD, but there's too much in your life story. There's just too much there. You are autistic. So, yes, really important. I've got that information and it's amazing. But then, and I want to ask you your experience about this, is it took a long time, years actually, and still happens, about this rewriting your life story with the new lens on it, the AuDHD lens on it. And plus, why was the depression? Why was the anxiety and the stress? And then I'm dyscalculic, I'm dyspraxic, and probably baby bipolar. But the traits, it's all quite fuzzy. And it takes a long time of imposter syndrome. People are much worse than me. What language do I use and everything else? And I don't know about you, but I got to a point where I said, I don't need to know anymore. I know who I am. What happened? Where are you just on this? I want to talk about about other things as well. But where are you today with it? Today with how you feel about who you are, Sammi?
I got rid of all my black and grey and white clothes almost immediately and suddenly felt freedom for probably the first time ever, actually. I suddenly didn't have this need to be liked, the people pleasing, the need to follow, make friends. I didn't now the friends that I have now are not the ones that they're the ones, the people I get on with. I get attracted to people that are into creativity, who are into poetry, who are. I just feel a lot happier in my own skin now than I ever did before. So I don't think I ever really had that grief. I suddenly had a reasoning and an explanation, and just my wacky thought patterns, and I'm a bit of an activist when it comes to things like feminism and veganism and things, and I don't believe in putting people into boxes. I don't really believe in gender stereotyping or anything like this. I just think that it's a little bit like the spectrum itself. When people talk, I think it's more like a mixing desk, and that mixing desk can change according to your mood, according to the day of the week, or how old you are. And that goes for everything. I believe in neurodiversity being like biodiversity. And why can't we just be human beings instead of saying you must be A, B, or C? And as soon as
Yeah.
I got that diagnosis, I realized that I thought differently for a reason. And I'm not dissing neurotypical people, but I think that we need people that think divergently from what I say society, um, to question, the way that we're controlled sometimes. And that's how we make progress. And we need all neurotypes. And so, why, what we know, why label people, really?
And we had a really lovely conversation a little while back, a few weeks back, and I was saying to you that, I see the whole of the world and the planet as a massive ant colony. And within the ant colony, there were really important reasons why there's different types of ants. I mean, forget having the one queen, we don't need to worry too much about that. But just imagine that us lot, us sort of quirky, different with different brains lot, we're part of the colony and we're really, really important. So if we weren't there, then maybe bacteria would get into the colony or would need to move colonies and everything else. And sometimes the people who have got different brains are very, very good at that. And we both love ants. You had an ant farm, and I haven't sent it to you yet. I took a fantastic video of the nuptial flight in August, and I absolutely adore ants. And so I kind of looked at it like that, really. And thinking about the differences and why I think we get on really well together. We have our different interests, and you call them mad fads, which I think is absolutely fabulous. And I just want to ask you about that. And the question I wanted to ask you to see if you can kind of intertwine it is, you have all sorts of creative interests. And can you share them with us? You've mentioned them, but just really how you think they might intertwine, like your poetry, painting, photography, and any other. Just give us a little
Mm.
picture of what it's like for you. Look, the smile, your face is lit up. Light it up for our audience.
There's a whole chapter on this in the book, actually.
Good.
Yeah, creativity and neurodiversity. Um, there's a couple of cases of actual where physical brain injuries happened. There's Edward Muybridge and Phineas Gage, where they've literally, Phineas Gage famously had a pole go straight through his head. You've
Yes.
probably seen that one, yeah. And both of those became very creative after the injury because it went through the frontal lobe. But one of the things that I discuss is that it may not be the fact that it made them creative. It's actually what it did is it reduced the inhibitions that prevent people from becoming creative. So, as you know, if somebody said, human beings can't fly, so everybody stopped trying, then we wouldn't have ever flown at all. So it takes people to push the boundaries and to become creative. Creative isn't just art and poetry, which is what I've done, and photography. It's being creative in just solving problems. Having a creative way of thinking is just as important. So it's thinking of different ways of doing things. And so if you get rid of those inhibitions and you just try, and if it doesn't work, try again and try again and there's not really anything to lose, that makes you a creative human being.
It
So
does. And just on that, because being ADHD, I'll forget otherwise, but I think it's quite important. I went on SSRIs just because things were being a bit overwhelming. It was citalopram, and it made me into a zombie. It numbed me and it numbed my emotions. And I think there's a really big connection between our emotions and our imagination and creativity. And a lot of autistic people have aphantasia, but it doesn't mean to say that they're not imaginative or creative. They just have to do it in a very different way. But I think it depends. Obviously, things like SSRIs, ADHD meds, HRT are life-saving for people. They absolutely are, and I get that. But I just know that my journey with SSRIs, I didn't want them because I would rather have the emotions to work with that are giving me messages. Because sometimes if I was in a deep depression or I was a bit manic, that was my best work. That was my best writing. It was my best everything. What do you think about that?
I won't deny that I used to think that alcohol made me more creative, but I don't think it did. I've changed my whole daily routine, so I get up earlier in the morning. I can't work or be creative when anything else is going on. I have to be in complete and utter silence. So it's either first thing in the morning or last thing at night. And I realise now that I do work better in the morning. It was never that way for my entire life before. But when it comes to medication, I do have ADHD meds, which I do take, but I don't take them on a daily basis as I was told to. I've got my review coming up soon. I've got a smaller dosage which I can take if I need to because I need to get something particularly done. And the reason is because when I started to take them on a daily basis, I found that it made me work even harder. Or it didn't make me work, it allowed me to work even harder. And I actually found that then when I decided I wanted to break because I didn't really want them to control me,
Yeah.
I would crash
Yeah.
because my body had got used to it. So I thought, no, I'll do it the other way round. And that works well for me. So if I am particularly tired, but I know something needs to be done, I will take them because it gets me through the day because I wouldn't cope at all otherwise.
And
But
I'm considering doing it. In fact, I'll share it now. This is the first time I've mentioned this because I haven't. So I've said all the time on LinkedIn and all my social media that I don't take meds. I'm 60 and I've managed. But having gone through really a horrible few weeks of whatever it was, burnout, depression, a bit bipolar, I don't know what it was, and what's happening to my brain, I need the silence. But when I'm triaged eventually, because I need an official ADHD diagnosis because I'm self-diagnosed, it will be really important for me that I can do something similar to you because I sleep really well and I don't want to change that. And I don't want to be controlled by it all the time. So it is interesting. But sort of going back to that wonderful entwining of your artistic creativity, because you gave me a virtual tour of your home and it was absolutely wonderful. Just tell me a little bit about how your photography, painting, and poetry, is it intertwined? Is it different? Just talk us through that.
um, I think I've always had an eye for seeing things. So we talked about ants. I've done a lot of macro photography, which is on one of my websites, where I'll just sit and notice things maybe. The photography I found quite easy because I just understood the exposure triangle. It's just like a code. The stage photography I love, and at the moment I'm employed professionally to photograph, for example, the Elvis years, which I love because I love Elvis, so I get to photograph them and watch the concert. Well, hello Mario, if he ever watches this. Um, and then I thought I'd try art, and the reason I tried the painting was because I thought this is going to rest. I'm going to do something that doesn't involve a screen. It's going to be relaxing, and I'm going to be able to use my creativity. But unfortunately, it didn't really happen like that because for two reasons. Number one, the perfectionism. I couldn't leave it halfway through like an abstract painting, and some of my drawings became like architectural drawings. They were that detailed. And secondly, because of the mess, really, I gathered so many materials. I had to have the oils, the acrylics, the pencils, the canvases, and they're all sitting at the bottom of my garden in a wooden cabin at the moment. And it was my husband that said to me, you're creative. He says you're a linguist. He says, if you took a paper and a pencil, would that make less mess? So I just went, well, I suppose so. And I'd always fancied writing, and then I started to write, and poetry started because I just love it. It's I just love poetic language, being a linguist, and also the way that it condenses these feelings into, in very few words, you condense a sentiment without having to explain it, if you understand what I mean.
Yes, yeah.
And that's why I do poetry workshops. And I started to do the poetry workshops because I started to teach people how they can get their mental health down on paper and how better that makes them feel. And some of the, that inevitably every time, people in the audience will say, or the participants will say that they're not poets. But I guarantee every single one will have a poem by the end. And some of them have been absolutely astounding when I just teach them how to just like meditate, almost free write, and just get those, let your brain wander. And then I realize that makes me relax. And that's a really important point, is that what makes me relax will be completely different to what makes somebody else relax. So if somebody wants to go for a walk, it might be relaxing. And I know that physically that's better for me than writing, but I know my OCD will kick in and I'll be scared that I've dropped something and I'll be out for 3 hours.
Yeah.
Or maybe the car lights, headlights might be a bit too overwhelming. Whereas my issue is my brain. So if I can sit down with a piece of paper and literally let my brain wander and write down what it wants to and give it the freedom to do so, it really relaxes my brain. And so that's what I find relaxing. And that's why I've kept up with it, and why I'm writing I'm writing a memoir and a sort of more a factual AuDHD book at the two books at the same time. Here we go again. Um, yes, I think it's probably the best thing I ever did was actually to give myself the time, actually, as well, to sit down and write and not think and not feel that I'm being lazy because of it.
Sometimes you don't have the time. I mean, I started writing my latest book at the end of 2021, when there was a lull in the COVID. And it took 4 years because it had to keep stopping for one thing or another, deaths of parents, moving house, work, clients and everything else. But when I turned 60, I promised myself that my 60th year, which is coming to the end next week, when I'm 61, which I don't like so much because it's got a 1 in it. But the 60th year has been absolutely amazing. And that was the goal, which I have to have. I said, no, I am going to finish the book. And I wrote the book and I self-published and I sent it off, and it had quite a lot of typos and things like that in it, because I'm not a perfectionist in that way. And it's languishing at the moment because I'm doing the podcast. But once I've done the podcast, this series, I'm going to go through it properly and then publish it properly and then do all the marketing and sales. But it has to be the right time. And if we hit walls, we have to let ourselves hit the walls and go away and come back. But you sound like you're really in the middle of it, even more than when we spoke last time. So are you sort of really cracking on with this at the moment?
I am, yeah. I did 3,000 words this morning.
Oh,
Um,
brilliant.
yeah, I mean, I'm very fortunate in that I have got my own business, so I've got members of staff that can keep answering the phones for me. I say fortunate, but my daughter says you're not fortunate. You put things into place to enable you. But I'm lucky that I've got help at the end of the day. But I've started to approach agents now with a couple of proposals. So fingers crossed. What it is I do the talks, and I'm in the NEC in a few weeks, and a lot of the time I go to these venues where they almost expect you to have a book, and I've been doing the talks before I've got the book.
Yeah.
So then I thought I'm going to have to get on with it. But then I thought, oh, I'm going to do this in a month. I was cracking out the words, and I realized actually the editing takes longer than it does to actually write the book in the first place. Yeah, but I'm hoping, fingers crossed, touch wood, that I'll have at least one, if not both of them, done by the end of the year. Yeah.
Brilliant. Oh, well, everything crossed, and I hope it goes really well for you. And it will do, because I can see that you're a bit monotropic about it, and it'll happen. And I can't wait to see it. So that'll be
Well, yeah,
fantastic.
I think the experiences I've got with the poetry, the workshops, the military, obviously the business, the
Yeah.
audits, bringing all that together. What's really important to say is I'm not doing this for my own benefit. My passion now is wanting to help people, and the amount of talks I give where somebody will come up to me afterwards and say, just one little thing, like, I did this story once about being in a hotel and how the OCD means that I can't get out of the room by 10 a.m. checkout time. And somebody came up to me afterwards and said, thank goodness you said that, because nobody else seems to understand. And as long as I touch a few people by writing these stories down, then that's really what I feel almost like a mission to do nowadays.
And it's a completely laudable mission, and I totally agree. And it's like when you're being a therapist, I've seen hundreds of clients, and some clients, I don't care about it. It's not that I'm really altruistic, but it's not a big deal for me. I don't care about likes and all that sort of stuff. I'm just not interested in that, because I'm not competitive for some reason. I'm just not. But it's just good enough knowing that there's a whole bunch of people out there who perhaps have seen me, that maybe one thing I'd said, or one bit of what we did together was helpful, and the same as you, just the fact that you did the talk and somebody just thought, thank God you said that. It's enough. It is important that we are enough. And I know a lot of ADHD people struggle with that, but we do just need to feel okay. Otherwise it burns us out, doesn't it? We've got lots of things in common, and one of the things was you showed me out your front window at your beautiful car you've got. We both love our music, we love our festivals and getting away from it all. I have a dream of having some kind of camper van, and I will have it one day. It's going to happen. But luckily at the moment, my husband's got he's just got a Volvo estate. It's quite a nice one. And I've bought a blow-up mattress and curtains for the windows. And when the weather gets a bit nicer, from last talking with you, I'm going to do some car camping. But you've got a lovely vehicle. Just tell me a little bit about the types of festivals you go to and about your vehicle.
It's a Fiat Doblo, and we'll have to go together, because
I'd love to.
yeah, I initially got it with the aim of getting away and just going and sitting by the sea or something and just writing. And that's why I got one with like complete windows all the way around. But that meant that I had to make the curtains, of course. But then I started to do the workshops at festivals, so I'll take that with me. And now when I do my talks, I'll often take the van, and I won't even sleep in a hotel because of my OCD struggles. I'll literally pull up somewhere. I do have to be a little bit careful because of my my issues with understanding social cues and that, because I have got parked in some quite dangerous places quite by accident. But we won't go into that. But I remember going to see a friend who's also a speaker who lives in the Lake District when one festival was cancelled. And I just pulled up in this wonderful place. It's like a car park. It's got a hotel, 24/7 toilets. You're literally got a lakeside view. And then when you wake up in the morning, there were boat trips. And I just sort of sat there and go, yeah, this is the life. So nowadays people can work, you can get your mobile signal. You have got your laptop. We're not tied in the house anymore. So I think I do struggle in the winter, but yeah, she's ready to go again very, very soon. I've just got to get the
And
winter
well,
turned.
I have got you booked, I think, for the walk along the Northumberland bird watching for the puffins and the gannets, and then taking a boat trip and doing a bit of that stuff. So I think that's in June. So I hope you might be free sometime in June, and we can maybe have a look at that in between festivals, which would be absolutely lovely. So you've covered quite a lot, so I'm just looking at my questions because we've spoken, and it's absolutely fine. It's absolutely brilliant. So what's important is I want to get your links and make sure that we put them in the show notes, because I just want to ask you this anyway for our audience. You've done this keynote speaking Are they videoed? Can people see some of, like TEDx talks and things like that and workshops? Have you got links to some of the talks so that people can actually see your talks?
Not, I haven't done a TEDx talk yet.
But
It's
any
on
of
the
the other
cards at
ones?
some point. Not the whole ones. I think there are snippets. So there is a show reel. There are bits of talks. I did also a one woman show in the Etc. Theatre in Camden. So there's little bits of that. Um, I'll be honest with you, it's just lack of time. I'm
But
just,
that one woman show in Camden sounds fantastic. I'd love to see that.
yeah, I did a mix of my poetry and audio. It was basically like a show about me as an AuDHD person using my poems
Brilliant.
in a show, and then afterwards there was a Q&A session. Uh, but yeah, I haven't put a lot online, and it's literally because I'm going from one thing to the next at the moment. So
And I know
I'm just,
you've got time,
yeah.
yeah, you've got time issues, and I get that, but it's literally if you have any sort of any links at all that it's not going to take you too much time to do, and they can always be added onto it. I can do that. That'd be brilliant. Just on your company, just quite briefly,
Oh,
you
I
know,
was going to
because
say the website is sammiford.com, so a lot of it is on there.
oh, okay, brilliant.
Yeah.
That's perfect. But those things that you've done, being in the Air Force, being a linguist, doing all these sort of things, but then you run your own company. Just very potted. It's quite a scientific company. What do you do? Make, serve? What is it you do?
It's SPCB UK Limited is in French, Société des Produits Chimiques de Bretagne, which basically means that I started off as an interpreter for French chemists when we lived in France because I moved there after leaving the Air Force, and I saw the opportunity because he wanted me to bring his products into the UK. I saw the opportunity. To cut a very long story short, I said, "Well, if you can do it, I can do it." And moved back to the UK and started with his products, but then built on that. And we supply spray booth filters, air chemicals to separate water, moss killers, and we supply most of the manufacturing businesses in the UK from British Aerospace, Bosch, these sorts of companies. And we've been doing it for 30 years, quite a niche market. And yeah, it's we do and sprayers. It's quite technical, to be quite honest. It's
Actually,
nothing to
I'm
do
just
with it.
I'm and look, I won't use the superpower word because everyone's jumping about and getting pissed off about that. But I will say you are a powerhouse and unbelievably impressive, I think, anyway. How can you be doing something so scientific like that and having all the problems with Brexit and that, and then doing a one-woman show in Camden and going through breakdowns and having children and your lovely husband who you've got a wonderful relationship with, and then planting fruit trees in your garden. I mean, it's just I could, and we have spoken for hours, and we will continue to do so because we like having a good chat. So, winding up today, having a fantastic first wonderful chat with you and a great podcast. I've really enjoyed speaking with you, Sammi. I ask all my guests if you can share kind of a message really for our audience to give hope and inspiration with regards to, I mean, I call it neurodivergence, menopause, because this is really what's been sort of tying things together for this series, and mental health. What would be your message to our audience?
I'm just thinking off the cuff now because, as you know, I've come straight out of trainings. A new member of my staff this morning.
Yeah.
But the phrase that comes literally to mind as we've been talking, I think, is never say never. I was going to say something completely different, but I think never say never. And that goes with never say never, I can't do something, but also never say never if you're in whatever situation you're in, whether it's a good situation, a bad situation, a dire situation, or you think you'll never get out of the hole, never say never.
I love it. I love it. Succinct, to the point, and anybody listening and watching can just take from that what they need for their never say never. And I think it's absolutely marvelous.
Mhm.
So Thanks once again, and I hope that whatever you're doing this afternoon, that you can have one of your huge big mugs of hot chocolate that I know that you enjoy, and have a bit of a rest. And I'll be in touch soon, and we'll have another natter. So once again, thank you so much, Sammi Ford, and great to talk with you.
My pleasure, Sally.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.